them in the fridge. I don't know. Just put them in the fridge. I don't know. But we keep getting back to beer delivered, don't we? Isn't that ridiculous? Put them in the fridge. I don't know. But we keep getting back to beer delivered, don't we? Isn't that ridiculous? All right, so I see both Dr. Muhammad and Dr. Kali on here, as well as Sandra Bonnet with the Rapid City Journal. We'll begin here shortly, and we'll go from there. Give about another minute or two for everyone to keep joining in. So, thank you. All right, I think we're ready to start here. Dr. Muhammad, are you ready?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great. I want to remind everybody, and I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We are showing this live tonight for clients of Fitzgerald Law Firm. If you're not with Fitzgerald Law Firm, please sign off. There is a recording that will be made of this. Actually, just a second on that. Yeah, just bear with me. It's my first time doing a Zoom, so I'm a little bit green here, but just a second, we'll get this flipped around here. All right, I think it's working now. I'm back in something that looks more familiar. All right, so how do I, Dr. Muhammad, like to make you the host, or how are we?
You don't have to make me the host. You could just give me permission to share screen, and that would work, I guess.
Okay, great. Let's
there's
see.
somewhere, I think it's under security.
Okay, yep, I just did security, allow participants to share screen.
Okay, so let me see. All right, you should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, excellent. We're good, so.
Okay. All right, you want me to start, or are we waiting for others to join?
Let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and start the recording as well. There we go. Yep, there we go. So let's go ahead and get started and go from there. So take it away, Dr. Muhammad.
All right, sure. First of all, thank you for all for joining us this evening. The main purpose of this presentation is to give you the results or the findings of our geophysical investigation that we did in the Hideaway Hill subdivision in Black Hawk, South Dakota. So just to give you a short explanation of what the objective of this study was. So as you all know, in 2020, a sinkhole opened up here, as if you can see my cursor here, this sinkhole opened up here, some cavers went in, and turns out that there's an underground abandoned gypsum mine in this area. And the cavers tried to map the mine as much as they could, and this here is the extent that they could mine. The problem was, as you can see on the west and south side of the area, shown with these red arrows, there were areas that they described as collapsed areas, which means that there were so many rocks in the way and they could not proceed further to the west or north or south on this end. So they couldn't map beyond this area, and they were not sure if there's mining on this side of the known extent or not. And also on the east side, as you can see here, it's shown with kind of a bluish color, this area was filled with water, so they could not proceed further to the east neither. So the main purpose of this study was to do some non-intrusive geophysical methods to see if there's any voids or mined areas beyond this known extent of the mine. So to do this, we actually used 3 geophysical methods. I'm categorized them as a main method and 2 complementary methods. The main method that we used was electrical resistivity tomography, or ERT. Shortly, we call that resistivity method. This is the main method that we use to determine if there's a hole or a void in the ground or not. But usually when we do geophysical methods, we use more than one method to confirm our findings, and it will help us interpret the findings of electrical resistivity method. So for this study, we used 2 different methods to complement our main electrical resistivity method. One of them was frequency domain electromagnetic method, and the other one was self-potential. Again, I'm trying to make this presentation short and just present the main findings that the residents might be interested in. So I'm not going to go into the details of everything. I'm just going to present the electrical resistivity method results. And then at some points, I actually also show these methods, the results of these methods and how we use them to interpret the electrical resistivity method. I'll try to keep it as simple as I can and don't go into the technical jibber jabber, and just give you the juice of the main findings of the study. Okay, so in order to do electrical resistivity, we actually did 9 electrical resistivity profile lines, line 1 through 9, as you can see in this figure. These yellow lines are the lines along which we did the testing. 8 of these, except for line 4, was actually to determine if there's a mine underneath these lines or not. Interpreting these type of electrical resistivity results is a little bit challenging, especially when it comes to gypsum, mainly because gypsum has multiple types, and each type has different signatures or different electrical resistivity behavior. So what we did is, fortunately, we had a gypsum outcrop in this area here. If you can see my arrow here, the top left side of the figure here, line 4. So we did a line right on top of the gypsum outcrop, and to kind of calibrate our results, and then use that to interpret the results of all the other 8 lines. Before I go ahead and start showing you the results, I just want to say, so these lines are as I said, are the lines along which we did the electrical resistivity test, and these red stars are the start point of the survey. And I explain why this is, why I did put that here, because it's kind of important when interpreting the results. So I'm going to start with line 4. That's where we started with the gypsum outcrop and what we found, and then I'll go, based on that, I'll go explain all the other results or findings. So this is a typical results of the electrical resistivity test. This is the 0 here is right where the star was here. So this 0 here at the top is actually right here, and the on the red star here, and the line goes, the profile goes along this yellow line, and this here is the depth. So this is the profile. So this is the red star in the previous picture, and we go along the yellow line. This is the end of the yellow line, and this is perpendicular, goes into the ground. This is the depth. So we did this. This is the results, and then there are a few points that was observed, and I want to explain here. So the first one is right here, the resistivity that I find here. This is right on top of this outcrop. This is the gypsum outcrop in the area. This Sharpie is for scale. So as you can see, the gypsum resistivities in this area is between 500, roughly 500 to more than 1,000 ohm meter. So that actually helps us to understand, okay, the gypsum in this area has resistivities between 500 ohm meter to a little bit more than 1,000 ohm meter. The other thing is, as you can see here, there are these two very low resistivity, these few very low resistivity areas. 3 of more important ones are here, here, and here. So upon investigation in the field, so we find out that this are type of soil feels like pretty much like a beach sand. We actually grabbed a little bit of sample from those soil, and we took that to Montana Tech laboratory, and we tested those. It turns out that these are disintegrated gypsum. So probably like 50% gypsum and about 50% impurities, mostly quartz. So this means that these are actually disintegrated gypsum in the area. And these are actually help us to interpret the results of the main 8 resistivity lines that we did. And by the way, we also, I jumped ahead, sorry. We also took some samples of gypsum from this outcrop, and we had some samples from gypsum samples from inside the mine that Patrick actually provided us. We tested them both in the lab in Montana Tech, and it turns out that they're pretty much the same gypsum. So this outcrop is actually the same, pretty much the same gypsum that was mined in the mine, which was a good finding, because we are trying to base based on our interpretation on this resistivity that we find here. Okay, going back to the results. I don't know why computer froze kind of. Sorry. Okay, so going back to this line, so this was the line that I just explained was this line 4. So I'm going to talk about these other lines. I'm not going to go over all of them one by one, but most important ones I'm going to explain. I'm going to start with this line 3 here. Oh, I'm sorry, line 1 here. I'm going to start with line 1. So this is the results of line 1. Again, start 0 here. This is the start. So the line goes actually from here to here. Okay, so as you can see, again, the important part for this profile is this area, which has a high resistivity. At the first glance, it would the resistivity of this area is pretty close to the lower range of gypsum. It's around 400, 500 to 700 ohm meter here. So we could interpret this as the gypsum layer. But as I said, we did some other tests to help interpret the results of our electrical resistivity, and this is one of them. So along this line, we also did SP method, which is the self-potential method. Self-potential method usually is used to show us the direction of the water flow in the ground. But particularly for this research area, we're most interested in the negative, highly negative self-potential values like this one here, because when we have a large negative SP value, it shows that the direction of flow is vertical. It means that in this area, water is actually going vertically into the ground. One of the situations that could cause this is if there was a hole or a void in the ground, the water tries to infiltrate vertically and get into that mine area. So the other possibility, other than this being gypsum, would be if there was a void here and the water is actually trying to get into that void. The problem with that interpretation is that if there was actually a void, empty void, the resistivity of that void would be in the orders of 2,000-3,000 ohm meter, not in mid 700 areas. So that also is not a very likely interpretation. So the other possible interpretation for this area would be that this is actually an area that was mined before, but now it's filled either with waste rock or a very coarse grained backfill. That would explain because if that's a mined area that's filled now with a very coarse grain, that explains the negative or the vertical movement of water in this area, and also explains the high resistivity seen in this area, but not as high as a completely empty void. So we think that most likely this is a mined area that is now backfilled with rock waste or very coarse backfill material. And that actually, going back to this figure, that actually makes sense because there are some indications in the literature that the north opening of the mine was actually somewhere around here. And we're talking about the high resistivity area is somewhere around here. So that makes sense if that was actually the north entrance of the mine here. So that means that they mined here to get to this area all the way in this direction. So, but they actually mined after they finished mining and was closing the mine, they actually backfilled this part of the mine. So that actually is consistent with what it seems to be the history of the mining in this area. But again, the other possibilities are still could be true, but most possible interpretation would be that this is a mined area that is now backfilled, either with rock waste or very coarse grained backfill material. Okay, so now I'm going to jump ahead and to this figure, which is the previous figure, but with a little bit more information on there. I put the known extent of the mine, the part that actually the cavers mined here on this figure. This white area with black dots in it is the area that was, at the time that the cavers went in, was dry, the mined area that was dry. And these blue lines here, or blue area here, is the areas that were filled with water. So we intentionally designed this line to go over this part, this part of the mine that is filled with water, to actually so we could actually kind of again calibrate our resistivity data. And this is the results of this line. So this line, this figure here actually has to be right on top of this, and this here actually goes perpendicular to the monitor. It goes into the ground. We turned it 90 degrees so we could see it, so we could actually show what we're talking about. But just to be consistent with the rest of the interpretation, so this is actually this figure turned around. So this is the start point, which is here. This is the start point, and this is the end, which is here, and this is again goes into the ground vertically. This is the same result as this one, pretty much. They're a little bit different because for each one of these electrical resistivity results, we use different arrays. The results are pretty much consistent, but as you can see, there are some minor differences. We do this often to compare the results of different arrays. Each array has its own advantages and disadvantages, but in this area, most of the results were pretty consistent. But these are the same results pretty much, but with different two different arrays and different scales as well. Anyways, so going back to the findings, I want to draw your attention to this area here. So this part of the line actually goes right above the mined area that was filled with water. So, and this corresponds to this area in this figure, or this area in this figure. Okay, so so as you can see, these three blue lines here are actually the mined areas that are now filled with water. And the water in this area, remember, we have gypsum all around in this area. So all the and gypsum is highly soluble in water. So all these water has a high amount of total dissolved solids, or TDS, because the gypsum is soluble. So, and that means that the resistivity of that water is going to be very low. As you can see, it's confirmed with these results. They actually look like mine working areas as well. And as you can see, the resistivities are very low. So this line here actually detected this portion of the mine, which is filled with water, and these are these three areas. So based on this, now we could actually interpret the rest of these areas as well. So this area here would be these areas. As you can see, we see the same features here as well, or in this figure, these areas, which means that actually the mine extends on this side as well. And we expected, even when the cavers went down here, they could see the mine goes further in this direction, but they could simply couldn't reach that area because it was full of water. But it shows it here on this profile here in this. And so these are also mined areas. So we have mined areas here as well. The other important thing is, even in this area, and this is one of the things that we wanted to figure out, if the mine actually extends to the south or southwest as well. Unfortunately, this profile shows that we have the same features here, which is right around this area here. So it seems like there's possibility, a high possibility actually, that there's mined areas filled with water underneath these houses as well. And if you can look at this, so we started at this point. So the depth of our investigation is not enough to interpret this area, but if you were to extend this here, is possible that we also have mined areas which is filled with water in this portion as well. So unfortunately, our results shows that all along this line here, all these houses, it is very likely that there is mining underneath all these houses all the way to this house, which was the end of our investigation for this. Just excuse me, just one more thing to that we did to actually double check our results for these areas that we don't know if the mine existed or not, and I guess validate these findings here is that this portion of figure that you see here, this is actually the SP results. Again, the red areas show the negative values. Again, just like line 4 that I explained, when we have negative SP, it indicates that the flow of underground water is vertical, which means that there's probably a hole or a void down there. And as you can see, these match pretty well with these areas. So the areas that we have negative values of SP, we are detecting with electroresistivity. Also, there are mines there. So it actually, again, valid or agrees with the findings of the electroresistivity. So again, all across this line, we have mined areas all over the place. The next line that I want to talk about is actually this line 2, which is the northeast side of the area. In this area, this is the mine, and this is the blown up figure, just this one here. Again, it starts, the 0 here, the start is here, the end at this side is here. And as you can see, this, again, we have all these areas that look exactly like mine working areas or voids here again. And these are, again, we expect that to be filled with water or saline water or waters with high total dissolved solids. So in other words, they have mines all across this area. Well, not all across, but in these areas as well. And again, these match very well with the SP results. So as you can see, this is right exactly right here. This is a negative SP, vertical movement of water, a very low resistivity area in the electroresistivity profile, which means that, which actually validate the interpretation that to a higher degree of certainty that we actually might have holes in these areas as well. And again, also, I'll have another figure that shows it. These two areas that these two lines cross, both of them are detecting mined areas filled with water. So again, in this area, we have mined areas here, here, and here, at least. The next line that I want to talk about is this line here, which talks about the western boundary of the mine. This is the line that we did. This is, I believe this is line 7. Yeah, this is line 7, and this is the results. As you can see, this area, we have these 4 areas of high resistivity. Again, high resistivity could be, based on the discussion that I gave on line 1, could be gypsum layer, a void, or mined area that is filled, backfilled, or like as the cavers called it, collapsed area. Based on the form, shape, and direction of these lines, we think that these are the continuation of that anomaly that we saw in this line. We believe that these are mined areas that are now backfilled either with waste rock or very coarse material. There are 2 lines, 2 areas, however, that I want to point out. One is this area right here, and the other one is this area. Particularly, this area is this in the middle of the backyard of the house, right next to the house that the sinkhole opened up. So if I'm not mistaken, the sinkhole is here. So this area here is right here. Actually, it shows here, right? right here. And when we were in the field, we actually inspected this area, and there was a depression in this area. And this also shows that, as you can see, these are again very not very but low resistivity, which reminds us of that deteriorated sandy material that we saw in the gypsum line that we did here. So we think that these areas are actually deteriorating. So this area and this area is the two areas that should be uh, uh, we should be very careful about these two areas, because it seems like uh, these areas are deteriorating, and there is a possibility that we could have a sinkhole open up in this area and this area. But again, it seems like the mine does not extend a lot beyond this, because we believe these are mined areas that are now backfilled. And the next line that we did was actually, this is the last line that we did. This is line 9, all the way on the, if I'm not mistaken, this is the Daisy Drive. So this is the line. As you can see, we do not see any significant feature here except for this one, which is right around here. And this could be an area that I was talking to one of the residents here that there was talking about that there was a collapse sometime here. But either way, it could be either a collapse area that is filled right now, or it's just simply a clay layer or a very soil layer with high amount of fine material. So, but other than that, we don't see any special features here. So we don't think the mine extends actually beyond this line, or not even. The mine ends somewhere between line 7 and 9. And that also is consistent with the information that we had, because there are two or three other openings of the mine on the west side that was located around here, which is consistent with these findings that we have here. So again, these are pretty close. This is line 7 again. These are pretty close to the areas that are supposedly the west entries of the mine. And as you can see, again, just like line 1, we believe that there are mined areas that are backfilled now. Okay, I'm not going to go over all these other lines, but just put all these lines except for line 4 that was here, and that was just a gypsum outcrop. So this is actually all the results gathered in one figure, one kind of three-dimensional figure. We call these phase diagrams. So again, just to give you an idea, so this was where allegedly the north entrance of the mine was. So as you can see, these lines actually pretty much consistent. They connect. So we think that the mine opened up here. The north entrance, the main entrance was here. So these are the areas that was mined previously, but now backfilled here. And these areas are the two west entrance of the mine. So again, and now these are backfilled, and then the mine goes in this direction. And as you can see, these are all the mined areas that are filled with water. And this is, again, another mined area that is filled with water. And these are all filled with water. Based on this result, we think that there is a good possibility that the mine actually extends to the east and northeast side of the area. And if that's the case, this probably is going to be filled with water. Before this is, I guess, yeah. So in conclusion, make it short, it's very likely that the mine actually extends well beyond the known or mapped areas that were mapped by the cavers, especially to northeast, east, and southeast side. We don't think that the mine extends well a lot further to the west side. At least we know that based on the results, we think the line 9 would be the very end of the mining. Actually, we couldn't find any mining in that area. Again, based on the information, it is possible that the mine actually extends below the interstate. We didn't do any testing there, but the trend shows that there is a chance that the mine actually goes under interstate. We cannot confirm this. We didn't do any testing there, but the trend shows it, that it goes in there. And again, I explained the mine does not extend beyond line 7, which is here. So we think this area, or let me go actually here, this area here should be pretty much the end of mining to the west, but the mine actually exists on this area to the east. One thing before I end and open up for any questions that you guys might have is that one question that actually I had, I believe a lot of you guys might have as well, is that I believe they did a line for the DOT along this portion here, and they did not find any, based on their report, they didn't find any holes here. And you might be asking, so why are we saying that there is possibility that there's mine there, and they said there's no mine there? I believe, and I haven't talked to those guys, and I can't say that for sure, but I believe the thing that they did, they were looking for mines that are completely dry. So they were looking for, so if I go, for example, to this figure, they did something like this, and they were looking for areas that have very high resistivity, meaning that there would be a open mine or a void or a mined area which is empty or filled with air. Based on our results here, it shows that if there is a mine beyond this, the extent of our investigation, they probably should be saturated. So they should have been looking for very low resistivity areas. And I saw in the report, I'm not gonna go to a lot of details on that report because obviously they're not here to defend their work, and we don't have permission to provide any of their figures. But when I was reading their report, they actually mentioned that some areas with very low resistivity, they actually, in one line somewhere in the report, they actually said that it is possible that that is a mined area that is filled with water. But their main focus was to find areas with very high resistivity with no water in it. And I think that's the difference between their results and our results. Fortunately, we did this test here going right over the mined area that is filled with water. We figured this features here are actually indication of mined areas, and we based all of our interpretations mainly on this finding. So that would be one reason that they didn't find anything, and we think there might be. Again, we did not do any investigations beyond this point, so there is a chance that the mine actually stops there. But if you look at the SP, and if you were to extrapolate there, it seems like there is a possibility. So I think it should be another line here focusing on finding areas with very low resistivity instead of high resistivity. That would actually conclude this presentation. I think I pointed out the major findings. I hope I gave you guys the information you needed, and now I'm gonna just open it up. If you have any questions or anything that you want me to go into in more details, please feel free to ask any questions.
Well, thank you, Dr. Muhammad. So I'm getting a lot of messages. This is Patrick again. People are curious about the thickness of the ground, especially along line 3. There's several houses there that you're indicating that there's possibly a extension of the mine there that are occupied. So what's the thickness to those yards, and what would be the hazard there to those homeowners that are there on that southern end there of line 3?
I believe we're talking about this line 3.
Yes, sir.
So one thing that I have to explain here, let me bring this line 3. So the way these things work is these models work is that we have points. Let me see if I can actually draw here. That would be very helpful. Okay, so the way these work, these models work, and I'm kind of probably butchering this whole thing, but to put it very simply, so we have data at points like this, right? We gather the data at point like this, right? These are the points that we actually measure the resistivities, and then these models are these models here that you see are actually developed by a trial and error process. So for example, we put one line here first, and then we go calculate the errors. Then we say, no, this is not good. Then we put the line here. We go back and forth to actually define, for example, let me stop this. So before we could actually find these lines here, okay? I'm saying all that to say that these are not exact, okay? So these are, we have something like called smoothing. So these depths are not exact, but that being said, based on these results, these areas, for example, this one is somewhere between 70.5 meters to about 15 meters. So sorry, we did all of this in meters because if you want to publish this in a journal or something, we have to be in SI units. But just to give you the, so these are somewhere between 25 feet deep to 45 feet deep, these ones. Obviously, these ones are a little bit shallower, and as we go down to this side, it gets deeper. So this one's, again, about 30 to 40 feet deep. Did I answer your question, or?
No, you did. And, you know, from your expertise, what would be the collapse hazard for those homes in that area? Is 25 feet enough surface to have any safety for those homes, or should those residents?
It is really hard. I really cannot give you any honest interpretation of the safety hazards. If you ask me, if there's a mine area that shallow, overall, if I'm being really, really conservative, I would say it's not really that safe. But you have to keep in mind, in order for me to give you a real safety interpretation, I have to have, so like the map that I have here, I have to have the map here. It's not just the depth. I have to know how wide the mine is, what is between the top of the mine area and the surface, and a lot of other things. What is the infiltration rate of water? A lot of things goes into play before I could give you any interpretation of how safe they are. I can't really, but even when I say that because there's a mine here, it's probably not safe, I have to add that even if there's a mine here, if all these interpretations, again, these are our interpretations, they are very likely to be true, but they're not 100%. And so assuming that these interpretations are absolutely correct, when it comes to safety, and if I said that this is eventually is going to collapse, that eventually I have no means of telling you when. It could collapse 2 years from now, or it could stay there intact for another 20, 30 years. So in order for me to narrow that down, I need a lot more information that I don't have. The main one being that, okay, so if there, for example, this one that is right on top of this, this one, if there's a mine here like 30 feet deep, what is the how wide that is, and what is the conditions of the walls of that mined area, if that makes any sense. But overall, again, these are mined areas, so the only thing is that, and that, remember, this is gypsum mine, and the enemy here is water. So obviously you cannot do too much about it because it's going to rain. The rain cannot infiltrate around here. This is asphalt or concrete. So the rainwater could actually infiltrate through these areas, goes into the ground, and as it's going through the ground, it dissolves the gypsum, and it could cause more and more stability problems. And if you look at this here, if you go back to the sinkhole that opened up, it's right next to where the rainwater from the roof comes down to the side of this house. All the water actually comes down and goes into the ground right here, right next to where the the sinkhole opened up. So those areas has to be really careful. The only thing that I could think of is that be a little bit careful. Do not like water your backyards or front yards too much. I don't know how effective that would be, because again, you cannot even if you do that, what you're going to do about the rainwater or snow. But the only thing that I could say is just do not water your backyards too much. Just water it just enough to keep your grass alive, but don't overdo it. If you usually water it, I don't have a backyard. I don't know how often you guys water it, but like if you usually water it every other day, just water it twice a week maybe, and try to minimize the area. But again, as far as safety goes, theoretically, eventually these are not safe. But as to if or when they fail, I need a lot more information to make that assessment. Excuse me.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think there's another question here from the Rapid City Journal.
Yes. Hi, Dr. Mohammed. This is Shandara Bonnet with the Rapid City Journal. I was wondering, you mentioned with line 7 that I believe I heard that there's a possibility for a sinkhole, but I think you also mentioned backfill. Would you mind talking about line 7 just a little bit more, please?
Yeah, so the line, actually, I have it up here. Hold on. I went the other way. So this is line 7, correct? And this is the sinkhole that opened up. I believe, yeah, this is the area that the sinkhole opened up. We're talking about this area. So these are, we believe, are previously mined areas that are now backfilled, okay? But usually the way it works is that, so probably this is a mined area, this is a mined area, this is a mined area, and this was just simply a area that was not mined, or it was like a, either it was a pillar or, excuse me, or it was just an area that was backfilled. But either way, so as you can see, and this correlates to this area right here. As you can see, we have very low resistivity areas. This could be nothing, but because this is a very low resistivity, and if I go back here to, this is also very low resistivity, which corresponds to disintegrated gypsum. So we think that there is a possibility that this area could have been gypsum, but now it is disintegrating and could be a potential place for either a sinkhole, if it was a mined area that was like backfilled, or if it was like a pillar, it could be a an area that could actually have a huge settlement happening here, if not sinkhole, huge settlement. And when we were on the field and we were trying to actually do this line or conduct the electricity along this line, we actually noticed this area. It was a backyard of this house right next to the house that the sinkhole opened up. This is the house the sinkhole opened up. This is the house next to it. So in the backyard right here, there was a depression area that you could actually feel if you walk here, right here, you can see that if you're walking this way, it goes a little bit down. It's a depression area. So we think that this is some area that should be, people should be very careful. This could be, I can't say if it would be a sinkhole, but this could be somewhere that we have a huge settlement, and the settlement could actually damage the foundation of this house as well. And there was actually, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, there was a concrete slab in the backyard here, and there was a huge crack right across that concrete slab as well. And that actually, we think that's the area that we should watch out for. And not to this extent, because this is very shallow, but the same thing could be said about this line and this here. But the main part that we actually saw some surface indication of depression also was this area that we think should be very careful. People should be very careful about this point here. I don't know if I answered your question or was it clear?
Yes, yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, but if there's other questions, please ask them. There's about a 1 minute delay. I know everyone's group's watching on YouTube as well. If you have a question, just put it there in the YouTube chat or send to my phone. I'll make sure it gets asked. So let's just have a little pause here.
If I may ask another question, this is Shandara at the Journal again.
Yeah, of course.
Dr. Muhammad, along line 3, and I know you spent some more time on that, but would you mind talking about kind of the water cavity just a bit more, and if that is an area for concern, if that would have any effect on kind of the I guess the top of the ground near where residents are, and if you were able to discern anything about water flow?
I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly, but again, so talking about this, if I go off of this here, so what we think, so this is the known extent of the mine that we know it's obviously filled with water, and these these dark blue areas here, here, and here, these are corresponding to this. Based off of that, if you're following the same pattern, we think there's a mine area here, here, and also here, and there's a chance that it extends here. Again, about the depth, as I said, it's roughly somewhere between, if I'm not mistaken, 25 to 45 feet deep. And they're filled with water. And again, as to the stability of this area, I need, as I just explained, I need a lot more information to talk about the stability. I cannot simply say if these are stable or not, but it's just common sense would be that there's a mine not too deep underneath these places, if these interpretations are correct. Again, these are our interpretations. If these are correct, which we believe they are pretty accurate, there's mine down there, and it's not too deep. Again, as for the stability, are they going to collapse? Are they going to cause any problems? Uh, uh, Only the depth, the fact that we know there's a mine opening there is not going to be enough for me to explain. I need to know the condition and the stratigraphy of the layers above the mine, how wide that mine is, and any points that I don't have any of those informations. And I really cannot talk about the stability here. And what was your last question about the water? I did not get that part.
Yes, sir. I was wondering if there was any indication of, I guess, if the water was moving underground toward an area. I know you mentioned that there's possibility that the mine extends toward the interstate, and I was wondering if you were able to find through your methods of research if uh, they're, I guess, moving in that direction.
Well, we did not try to look at the flow of water. We just use these SP here, as you can see here. These red area, we mostly were interested. You could use SP methods to interpret the direction of flow of water, but we did not do that part because the main thing that we were interested and the main purpose of us doing the SP was just to identify the high negative SP areas that indicates that there's a downward movement of water, which would be an indication of a void, could be an indication of void underground. As you can see in these areas, these red areas, we see negative values, and that which corresponds with these dark blue areas in the electrical resistivity, which actually validates our interpretation to a higher degree of certainty that these could actually be voids. But as far as the flow of water itself, especially in the mine, we haven't done any investigation to answer that question, unfortunately.
Thank you so much.
Sure. I have another question that came in. So we talk a lot about the voids and what we can see with the voids from your testing, but I was curious if there's any kind of way that you can see the health of the pillars or the placement of the pillars, and if that can give any assurances to the homeowners that are there in the southern portion of the area.
You mean how we could like stabilize this area?
Well, if there's a way from the methods here that we can tell if the pillars are strong or healthy, or if the pillars are well placed, any kind of inference on the solidity of the pillars themselves.
Well, we can not really. Well, actually, not really. We cannot. Except for some areas, like for example, now that you asked, like this area, it seems like it's right underneath here. So if there was let me actually see if there was well, it doesn't say it here, but so I think the short answer to that question is not really. We don't have any way of interpreting the health of the pillars from these investigations. The answer would be no. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. And another question that came in is, let's see here. From your experience, what do you believe would be an appropriate way to maybe fix this? Is it fixable, or do we just need to discover where it's at and maybe get these people moved?
Well, when you ask about fixable, it all comes down to the budget and whether or not it's worth it or not. I was reading a study that was done with the South Dakota School of Mine, I believe, that did some study in this area, and what they did was that one of the main, one of the most common methods of actually remediating this problem is to backfill the mine. And if I remember correctly, the cost of and backfilling means that you have to start somewhere and push filling material, which is usually a paste that you push into the opened areas to act like kind of, not exactly, but kind of like cementing all the open areas. Is it doable? Yes, of course. But is it worth it? I mean, you have to compare the cost of that backfilling with the cost of all the houses that are affected. It's probably is going to be, it's going to cost more. I believe it was in that report that I say it was going to cost. Don't quote me on this. I might be wrong, but if I remember correctly, the cost was too much, that it wasn't feasible. And I believe what they did, they just estimated the cost for backfilling just this area. And if we are saying that this actually, the mine actually extends beyond this, that would be even more costly. So that would be the most common way of stabilizing these houses. The other one would be, I'm not sure if that's going to work or not. It depends on a lot of things, but the other thing would be to put hydraulic jack piers. I can't remember the name again. In other words, so I believe most of these houses have shallow foundations. You could go to deep foundation, change them. There are obviously limits as to where and how you could do it. But if that is possible, again, that is going to be, that's going to have two problems. The first one being that it's going to be really expensive as well, and it has to be done for each house individually. And the other thing is a lot of methods are not going to work if the deep foundation has to go through the mine opening itself. So I think I'm thinking out loud, but the most the easiest solution would be to backfill the area, the whole mine. But then it's again comes down to how much it's going to cost, and is it worth it or not, as compared to the price of the house itself. So I'm talking about like if someone is being held responsible for these problems here, they should then do a analysis to see if it is better to pay off all these houses or to actually fix the problem. I think, again, I haven't done any study on this, but I think by the looks of it, fixing the problem is going to cost more. So.
All right, and to circle back, another question on the pillars. I just got to make sure I understand this. We're here on line 3 right now, and we have the darker blue areas, like a 144, yeah, or meter 144, meter at 165,
Yes,
meter about 190. Are those the voids, and then maybe the slightly less dark blue is perhaps the pillars, or is that not even a fair assessment to make?
So that's actually a good question. These areas, based on our interpretation, these dark areas are the areas that we think are mined and filled with water, at least mostly. Okay, but we cannot really go into this separation of these two. So I would say all these blue, the very dark and a little bit lighter blue areas, these are all areas of potential hazard. And this all comes down, if you just compare these two figures here, they're the same line, but two different methods, or I believe also two different scales. But for example, look at this here. We're seeing 3 different distinct areas, but other methods shows all of them as one area. Okay, so I cannot really, so these are, again, these are all numerical models, so you cannot look at them. So these separation areas are not really how to say it, they're not really certain. These are all the best possible models that we could come up with. And as you can see, different models gives us different results. Let's just compare these two areas here. So this shows one big dark blue, and this shows two separate ones with this in between. So what I would say is that these darker areas are the mined areas, and these blue areas could be either mined again, areas filled with water, or they could also be pillars that are disintegrating. That's why I hesitated when you asked this question. You could do these interpretations, but these are way beyond the accuracy of these methods. So I'd rather really not go into that. So I would say this continuous area here that you can see with that dark blue and a little bit lighter blue, these are all possible areas. These are being the most possible ones, and all these other areas could be either mined areas or fully saturated rocks, really porous rocks. So I would hesitate to do that type of interpretations, but.
So then looking at the same grid here, it looks like then from about the area from meter 0 to meter, say, 130 or so, a little bit less certain if that's voids or what that would be. But from maybe 130 meters to the end of your line, where you have that darker blue, you're pretty certain that.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying talk about this area?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I would say this here. This is pretty likely that to be a mine. But these areas, yeah, these could be. And you also have to look at the depth of the mining as well. So these areas are more likely not mine areas. Again, these areas are most likely mined areas. But I think this here, which corresponds to 64, these here also could very well be mined areas. But you are correct that all of this could be just simply fully saturated, highly porous rocks. But if you look at this, I know I'm saying that you cannot rely too much on the shape of these, but to some extent, if you look at these actually kind of remind us of a working area here, just like this one. So I would say there's a good chance that this is a mined area. These are really not that certain in this area, but this is another one. These three we know there are mines here. So these are definitely mined, and these are most likely mined areas.
Well, that's a lot of clarity to the conversation for sure. And another question, okay, is it possible to infer from this? So we have the streets here. You have Daisies, that's line 9. Line 3 is kind of paralleling East Daisy over to West Elmwood. Do you feel there's maybe warranted study to the further to the southeast to see if the mine goes down towards West Elmwood? That's where that cul-de-sac's at down there at the bottom left of that picture.
Here?
Yes, sir. That's West Elmwood. Yep. So the homeowners down there, should they be concerned, or what should we be looking for over there?
It's really hard. Let me actually go to this figure. So again, the mine comes here. These are interpretation. These are all backfilled now, and this is the extent of the known extent of the mine, and these are all the mined areas. Excuse me, that we think are filled with water. As you can see here, we have another area that is filled with water. So line 8, this area here, it seems like there's mine in this area too. But as for this area, it's really hard from this information to say if there's mine there or not. It is possible, but we need a few more lines to actually confirm that. Actually, Dr. Khalil and I was talking about it. Another thing that we could do is to actually come down there and do a more, this was just a primary study to actually get a better understanding of the situation of if there's actually the possibility of the mine extending beyond this known area. Now that we think it is actually very well possible that the mine actually extends well beyond this, we could actually come back there and do a more systemic sets of resistivity studies. For example, let me go to a better line here. So for example, do a lot of a series of lines parallel like this here, and then that would actually give us a better figure like this with more information here, okay? And then we could actually come up, we could actually try to build a 3D model of the mine based on the results of the electroresistivity. But as from the information that we have, the only thing that I could say is that it is possible. The trend shows that it is possible that there would be mine here, but we have no way of confirming or denying that possibility. It's just, we could say that trend shows that possibly. And I can't even tell you if like 10%, 60%, I don't have enough information to do that extrapolation, but I would say, yeah, that is possible.
Well, and I guess we got another follow-up question that just came in. If you were to come back in a few months and you know, do an expanded study, would you expect to see, you know, any changes from these results? Would you know, be able to see maybe more of the columns have collapsed or anything like that? Would that be within the resolution of your study?
I think Dr. Khalil is could answer this question better. I believe when we come back, we have to do, because all these results also depend on what time in the year we do these studies, because the rain and all the flow of groundwater actually changes these results. But I think we have to do a new set of lines parallel in these areas. Dr. Khalil, I don't know if he's still here or not, but he would be able to answer this question a lot better than I do.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm following.
We can hear you, Dr. Khalil.
Do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for having me in this talk. I think we proposed to do a 3D resistivity survey, particularly in the eastern part of the area, because there is a large evidence of the existence of tunnels or working mine area. I don't have the ability to share my my file or my screen, but I was listening to an important question about the pillars. If we can define some pillars or recognize some pillars. So if you go to line 3, which is the longest line here, you can match, yeah, this figure, yeah, this figure. this figure, this one, yeah. So you can match between resistivity section, which is line 3, and SB. And as you can see in SB, we have a positive zone, which is this one and this one. And this positive zone is completely matching this large pillar at 192 meters. You see this large green zone coming from the surface to the deeper red layer at 192. So this one is completely matching with the positive SCB, which is a blue color here. So this means when we have a positive SCB, it means that there is no infiltration, there is no water in this area. And if you go to the red zone, which is a negative SCB, it matches the dark blue zone, which is could be interpreted as a tunnel. And you can count actually one positive, and this is the second positive or the second blue, and the third blue, and the fourth blue. So this positive blue is exactly these pillars. This is the first one, the second one, third one, and fourth one. So we have a large evidence of the existence of pillars, and in between we have tunnels that shows a negative SCB and infiltration of water. As you know, when we did this survey, we had a little information about the background of mining activity. The mining activity in this area goes back to probably 100 years, and you can imagine what could happen within this 100 years. Could be some filling, backfilling. I mean, we don't know what is the material of these filling. Is a dirt? Is concrete? So what is the type of material? And in resistivity, we are looking to the physical property. We are looking to resistivity. And this creates a large ambiguity also for interpretation. We don't have, we don't know the type of material. It is a dirt or a concrete, or what is that? We don't know actually. But despite of that, we got a promising results. We got a matching between two different geophysical methods, resistivity and SCB. Both are supporting each other and proposing the existence of tunnels here, and these tunnels are fully saturated with water. We are completely sure we have a large confidence to say that in this area, in the northeastern area, but this area, but the southern part of line 2, this one, we didn't measure SCB because we don't know what is inside the earth. It's just you can say this is a pilot survey expedition. We don't know what is inside, but we got some evidences also for the existence of tunnels, and we can do SCB in this area to prove or disprove this hypothesis. So I think what we got right now in terms of findings and results are amazing. The methods are supporting each other, showing some tunnels, some pillars, some filling of the tunnel. But I think we need to go another time to the area and to do a more detailed 3D survey. And after that, we can image the tunnels more accurate. We're gonna to have a 3D model of the area showing everything, and we can support our result by doing some drilling as well.
Thank you, Dr. Cowley there. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but okay, so just to summarize for the lay viewer here, the red areas are where you have the negative LV values. Are you saying you believe that's those red areas in the same image right there? We have the cursor. That's where you believe that there are saturated mine voids?
Yes, yes. The red area in SB shows the downward seepage of water. And this means we have fully saturated or partially saturated tunnels. And the yellow spots, the blue spots, it shows the location of pillars.
Thank you, that helps. I'm gonna see if there's any more questions here. Like I said, about a 1 minute delay between the YouTube broadcast and what we're saying here. So just bear with me here, technology.
And this is also very clear if you go, Dr. Muhammad, if you go to section 2 and the SB profile, yeah, this one in the upper part, you see this one, section 2, yes. So I plotted the SB anomaly parallel to section 2. And you see, if you look to the upper right corner of the figure, yes, this one, you can match perfectly between the negative SB, which is these peaks that has a negative SB, and the tunnel shape. And this one also is a negative SB, and we have a tunnel shape. This one is a negative SB, and we have a tunnel shape. And in between, we have a positive SB, refers to a pillar shape. So this one has a very low negative, is approaching 0, and is directly above the pillar shape resistivity.
And on the same image here, if you can, that area that is to the north and west of Daisy Loop is a red area showing up there. What do you believe that to be?
Sorry,
that was line 1, Dr. Khalil. This is this area.
Yeah.
Yes, it'd be line 1.
This.
Yeah. In fact, line 1. If you go to the fence diagram, please, Dr. Muhammad, the fence diagram. Yes. So this is line 1. And here is line 5, I think, B5.
Line 1.
Yeah.
And this is line 5.
And line 5. So you can match between this high resistivity zone that shows a bloom to this direction, and this one also that shows a bloom in this direction. We already have some information about the tunnel opening or a mine opening in this area, and this open is extending in this direction and goes to the middle of the area in between here. So I think this high resistivity is some sort of filling of this open, some sort of filling, and the negative SB means we have some infiltration of water as well in this backfilling.
Yes, yeah, we saw that on the report there for line 1 as well, the houses up there. Is there any way to know that filling, to know if that's structurally sound, or is that something that's maybe also collapsing or in some area of compression issues? Is there a way to answer those questions on that?
Yeah, in fact, from resistivity section, I cannot expect any sort of collapsing, but what I can see is just infiltration of water reflected in a negative SB, and this bloom shape of high resistivity. But for collapsing, in fact, I cannot conclude anything in this area in terms of geophysics. I think it needs some geotechnical study or something like this to see the stability of soil and so on. But from geophysics, from resistivity, I see only the variation in resistivity, higher resistivity here and low resistivity nearby. And I see a plume shape of resistivity. I see a negative SCB. So all of these results support the infiltration of some surface water.
And just, to summarize, infiltration of surface water and dissolvable gypsum is not really a very good matching equation.
Of course, yeah, of course. Yeah, in fact, we should recommend in this area particularly to be very careful or to stop using water for watering a grass or something like this. Water is very dangerous for this area. And if you go back to the history of the two sinkholes in 2020 and 2016, I think the main reason of these sinkholes is to use excessive water. If I'm not mistaken, yeah. Particularly,
well, yeah. I think it's not the use of excessive water, but they're right next to where the rainwater comes from the roof down to the
this is what I mean.
Under the ground, so it's it's caused by infiltrating water, but not necessarily the use of the residents, but just natural rainwater.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely the water is the most important factor here.
Yeah. Using water in this area is very dangerous. So people should be aware of that. Stop using water completely. I don't know how to deal with that. Should be some regulations, something to stop using water, maybe.
Another question I had, I guess for Dr. Muhammad here, when you were out here, there were some samples that you took back to the lab to analyze to see what type of gypsum that they were. There's 2 or 3 different types, and I was curious if you had a chance to analyze those or what those they would told you about this situation, or if you can kind of elaborate some.
Yeah, well if you're talking about the samples being gypsum or hemihydrite or anhydrite, they are all gypsum. They're not anhydrite. So we did test the samples, and they're the same. So we took sample from this outcrop here. We tested those, and also, if you remember, when you came to Montana Tech, you brought me some samples from inside the mine. And we tested both of them, XRD and XRF, and they are pretty similar in composition, and they're both gypsum, not the other types.
So let's definitely check out as gypsum then.
Yes.
Just waiting to see if there's any more questions. Once again, we have about a 1-minute delay or so on between the chat and we are in live, so just kind of waiting to catch up here. Just shoot me a text 605-545-4542, or you can reply there in the YouTube chat itself. All right, I'm not hearing or seeing any more questions, so pardon the long, awkward pause. Oh, wait, here we go. Here we go. Okay, is there any indication around the sewer line on East Daisy as far as the stability and the lines themselves? Okay, so I think that might have already been resolved. So the East Daisy is the sewer lines in the center of the road. They're on East Daisy. There's a force main that is on the eastern side of the road, eastern sidewalk. And one of the concerns I hear in the community has been that those are going to collapse or that those are compromised. Is there any inference that we can make about the stability or the risk to those utility lines? Like I say again, the sewer lines in the middle of East Daisy and the force
Is
main
this
that's
one
on
East Daisy?
yeah, it's East Daisy. Yeah, there's one down the middle of the road is the sewer, and then on the east side of the street, so the eastern sidewalk is where the force main is at. There's a pump house at the very top of Daisy Loop, and one of the concerns is that if that line, that force main, especially if it were to break, that we would have a substantial issue here in the community for sanitary.
Well, I think the one that goes right down the middle of the street, that's already destroyed, right? Because the sinkhole opens up right here.
No, the one in the middle of the street's still there. What's been destroyed is one on the west side, which is the water main itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then on the other far side of the street, and that's the force main. I think the force main is really the bigger issue here.
Again, so line 6 goes here. So line 6, if you're saying it goes over this area here and another one here. Again, I don't have enough information to talk about the stability of these areas here, but again, we're saying that these areas are all mined, and we know this part is mined, so I would say there is a risk, but is it gonna fail or when it is gonna fail? I don't have enough information to make any estimation on that. All I can say is that there is, well, obviously you can see here that there's both of them are going over the mine, but is it safe or not? I really cannot make that judgment here.
Okay, and another thing I think that's being discussed here is, we know where you're kind of finding areas here where the mining actually took place. Is there a way, or could you estimate for us the zone of lateral drop? How far, away from the workings would these houses slide into the mine? I mean, the Trudeau hole, his yard essentially slid under the street, so they're gonna collapse laterally into the mine workings. Is there a way that we can kind of figure out or estimate, or just a good rule of thumb for what that would be, or how we would estimate that hazard?
Well, the angle of draw actually is not, it doesn't talk about the area that might slip into the mine. It actually talks about the extent that could see some effects. Okay, so for that, if you're going to be highly conservative, the angle of draw, there is a lot of debate. There was a lot of debate on the angle of draw. So let me see if I can actually again add something here. Okay, so let's say this is the ground surface, right? and this is a mine opening, and these are all ground. So all angle of draw says is that, so there is a line at one end of the opening or the void. So all the areas that could be affected by this is going to extend like this. And this angle here, this alpha here, let me actually choose another color. So this angle here, this alpha, this is the angle of draw. So all this area could be affected by this open mine. This is a rather an old term that people used to use, and back then it was still some people use it. It's not obsolete or anything, but it was used a lot more previously. And so all it says is that this area here on this portion are prone to some sort of effect because of this open mine. It doesn't necessarily mean that all the way to this area that is going to collapse. Okay. And this alpha here actually could be anywhere from base. It depends on what layers you have here, what type of material we have here, and what is this depth, what is this width here. These all have effect, but generally this alpha changes between 10 to 15 degrees all the way to 60 degrees. So if you want to be conservative, you could from the bottom of the opening, draw a line at 60 degrees, all that area is going to be affected. The reason that it's not used that often anymore is because with the development of numerical models, usually people now do numerical models, so they don't need really, this is kind of an empirical method of estimating the area that will be affected by the mine. So because we have numerical models, most of the time people do numerical modeling, so they don't usually use this. So there's not a lot of new information on this, but we could narrow it down. I haven't spent any time on this, but I could narrow it down to see if it's closer to 15 or closer to 60 degrees based on the information that we have about the overlying layers. If we have that information, actually, if I remember, there are different hypotheses about the layers about that. That we, some of the area we think there's a layer or a fill layer that they put in place to build the subdivision, but there are some discussions whether or not they are compacted or not. These are all going to affect this whole thing. But to be conservative, just we could go with 60 degrees and call it over conservative, maybe type of angle draw.
Yeah, thank you very much for that explanation. That's been, I know we've been trying to study and do some estimates for. I know in any future studies we're interested in the geomechanics of just how we can establish what that angle is so we can assure the safety of the affected houses. I'm looking here on the chats. I think we've covered, I see some questions on the YouTube. I think we covered all of those. Let's see, they plan to come back. Oh, here we go. Dr. Muhammad and crew, when you guys come back, we've got an offer here for a barbecue. Apparently we're going to get some free food out of this deal here.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm going to be there too. Let's see, anything else we have coming in here? I'll just give it a few seconds. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything else. I'm going to give it a few seconds here, 30 seconds. Again, we're on about a 1 minute delay for the live broadcast on YouTube. So I just want to kind of catch up with the screen here. If there's any issues, questions around the angle of drop or any of that. I do want to thank you, Dr. Muhammad and crew for coming out here. This has been phenomenal. It's been a great getting some of these questions answered. Unfortunately, it seems like we have perhaps more questions that have come out of the study than perhaps questions that we've had answered. So we definitely need to, schedule you guys to come out for some additional work and see if we can figure out some, especially that West Elmwood area, how far in that southeastern direction that it goes. I believe the state of South Dakota would be interested in doing a study again with the interstate, using some of the the control samples that we have, with the assumption that it's a saturated void, and they're looking for a dry void in their figures. But I think that's, with the motorcycle rally coming up here in a month, I think that's definitely an area of concern that we need to have answered, or I should say the state of South Dakota needs to have answered. But yeah, just kind of waiting here for more questions, and I'm not seeing anything popping through. So, what is this one? Is this a question? Oh, that's not a question. Okay, so if there's not anything else, I want to again, thank you guys for coming out and definitely putting this presentation together for us tonight. It's been very insightful, and we're very thankful for your work, and we look forward to supporting more of your efforts and investigations here in the future. It's not all about litigation; it's also about safety. It's about figuring out where these hazards are at and which houses are actually threatened and which ones aren't. We're gonna have some questions about, which houses are actually within the hazard zone. Is it, for example, the ones farther south? Is there any way of determining if those are, even if there's voids, are those stable voids or the unstable voids, or just what exactly is the, immediate hazard there? But yeah, we're definitely interested in, I think, doing some more work with you guys and having you out here maybe later on the summer if you could.
We're actually, from a research point of view, this is a really interesting, finding the voids inside gypsum layers. It's a little bit more challenging than regular voids in other types of rocks. So from a research point of view, we are super excited about doing more work in this area as well. And we are ready to come back if you wanted us to do so. We would be more than happy, both to help the resident and answer some more questions. And selfishly, from our research point of view, that's a very interesting research area for us as well. So once again, I want to thank all the residents in the area that helped us and allowed us to work in the area. They pop in their backyards, sometimes unannounced. We tried to knock on the doors, but anyways, we want to thank you. Thank you guys and the Fitzgerald Law Firm and all the residents there, and hope to see you guys soon.
Yeah, thank you again very much, and we'll be in touch, and we'll be talking about some future work with for you. So,
sure.
Yeah, thank you. So have a great night, everybody, and thanks for tuning in and for catching our presentation here. Anything else I can do for anybody, let me know. You get my number, 605-545-4542. Call, text, whatever. Email patrick@fitzgeraldfirm.com, or if there's 7015 Daisy, if you're kind of more of a face-to-face sort of person, that's what I am. Trust me, this face, I'd like to have a face-to-face interaction where possible. Anyway, yeah, we have a great night, and I'm probably going to be up for a couple more hours. So once again, thank you guys, and thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.